Good evening, everyone. We're on our journey between Belgrade and Bar. Hello, everyone, particularly to those in audio-only format, for which I don't know whether this works at all, on which note there might be spiky loud bits because I might be talking from inside the vestibule of a train. Let's get cracking. Welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. As the Intercity 225 fades away, let's interrupt a rather pensive-looking me from 2 years ago to see what our progress is. So we are kind of in the foothills, I suppose, through Zlatibor, near Zlatibor. I don't know if the train actually goes through there. We're slowing for a station actually, but it's what is it? It's around 20 to 1, so quite a few hours left. We're pulling out. What's this station? This is Branešci. Interesting. Anyway, yeah, the journey continues. These views are quite different. It's kind of rolling and different sorts of agriculture. It's fascinating. Following those canyons, which were spectacular. It's very cool. Very, very cool. So where are we? We are pretty much exactly 1,900 kilometres from Rail Natter Towers at this point on our journey in Serbia at the moment, getting close to the Bosnian border. Our journey, we started in Belgrade. Last episode, 2 weeks ago, we worked our way south to Užice. This episode, we're going to be going from Užice down to Kolašin, and then from Kolašin dropping down to Bar in 2 weeks' time for the last episode. Let's have a little bit of a closer look. So at the end of the last episode, we ended in, or just outside of Užice, and that was in part 1. And this part 2, we're going from Užice to Kolašin, so we now found ourselves in a place called Branešci, which is about a third of the way between Užice and Priboj. There in Serbia, we're kind of approaching the brief period, the 9 kilometres or so that we'll spend in Bosnia. And you can see that we're climbing up the hill to go underneath Zlatibor mountain, and we will then drop down to Priboj and then Prijepolje to head towards the Serbian and Montenegrin border. In the meantime, we have to have a brief trip into Bosnia. And so there we are, pulling out of Branešci. Quite a sizable station for quite a small place. What else? Let's speak to me in a train. This is spooky. And quite loud. So I don't know how well you can hear me because it's quite loud up this end of the train. But this is coach 1. I've come to the other end. That way, we're in a tunnel as well. So in there is the loco. That's it, through there. Through these doors I could basically open. But this is a compartment coach. So it's like an old, lots of nice compartments with a corridor. It's only 4 coaches, but given the length of this train, it's such a long train, it's got a very Orient Express feel to it. Although, we pick up new people as we go along. But this tunnel is a long one. We've been in it for ages. We're still trundling through it. This could be one of the really long tunnels, like the 6 kilometre ones. And who knows what terrain is going to appear around us on the other side. Well, all sorts. A view down a hill for a start. There we are. There's an enormous gorge and some chalets and all sorts. Quite interesting things going on. Then kind of typifying this section of the line. Also, just enormously high bridges on the side of mountains or crossing between valleys. With water bodies down below. It's just absolutely spectacular. In fact, as you see, as I pan the camera up here, there's Dina's reflection. And Dina's legs, indeed. There's fantastic views up the gorge that I failed to film because, unfortunately, one of the tricky things about the train is you pop in and out of left, right, centre, tunnel this way, tunnel that way, cutting woods. It's quite difficult to film. Anyway, there's a nice view of of the loco pulling us along, 461001. It's quite a smart looking loco given its age. Very nice. And along here, some very well maintained track. Actually, peek behind the curtain. This is a bit of footage I filmed later on, but you know, I like to cut in a bit of slightly different footage to keep things visually interesting, right? Anyway, more views down gorges. Two-track tunnel. One of the things, there's clearly a lot of civil engineering here, and in some sections where it looks like there's passing provision. So here you go, there's this long section where there's a provision for a passing loop up high in the mountains that was clearly decided not to be taken. Perhaps the civil engineering got ahead of the kind of operational plan in the 70s when this section was built, but or the 60s and 70s when this section was being built. Yet another enormous bridge, views down mountains and gorges, little reveal there. Just a little snapshot. You get these little snapshots all the time. This, I mean, there's an enormous bit of civil engineering going on down there. Possibly access to a mine? So down here is a river I'm not sure the name of, but passing into a tunnel. We were just in, and we are now in Bosnia and Herzegovina, momentarily. So, yeah, this train really does weave its way through quite a large extent of the former Yugoslavia. On another spectacular viaduct there. I don't really think I can communicate to you how cool it is. There we are, another viaduct. Briefly, Golesh, that hut. We are in Bosnia, Republic of Srpska, but actually, ethnopolitics. Let's park it. Very beautiful, but quite frozen in time. Let's put it that way. Absolutely normally, we've come to a stop inside the tunnel. I think we're still in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm going to ask Dina how she feels about this. Dina, how do you feel about stopping in this tunnel?
Have we stopped?
That's, yeah, there we go. So, it's absolutely fine. Normal stopping in a dark tunnel. The mystery of the journey continues. Yeah, it's me being very cheerful, looking across a rather beautiful bit of Bosnia. But here is there's a nice Stadler flirt. We're actually now pulling into Štrpci station, or we're not pulling in. We kind of passed through without stopping. Actually, hopefully that local train stopped. This was the location in 1993 of a pretty horrific massacre of 18 Bosniaks and one Croat by the kind of the militia group that call themselves the Avengers, one part of the White Eagles, Bosnia Serb militia, as part of the various horror scenarios with all their ethno-nationalist symbology all over the station. Don't have militias, folks. They're just bad news. Anyway, yeah, it's a pretty horrific situation. They pulled out. They just basically dragged this train back in February 1993. They just pulled those people out of the train having stopped, and just shot them. Pretty horrific. It's kind of a cheerful view of the beauty of this bit of, the whole set of videos is supposed to be kind of a nice view of a stunningly beautiful railway, but you can't hide away from the context and what happened pretty recently. It has to be said. Anyway, we just went through that tunnel and disappeared out of Bosnia and arrived back into Serbia, which is quite interesting. And indeed, these views down the valley, I think I'm about to wibble the camera down to look down at the valley floor. These views and all the chaos and all the horrible history into recent and further in the distance history, plus this sort of terrain that we can see, is all worthy of keeping fresh in your mind, because as we look back, actually we're reaching a more populated part of within Serbia, so the Bosnian bit is pretty empty. Actually, this bit of Serbia, very close to Bosnia, is pretty well populated. The reason for all that, we're going to explain momentarily, because I'm going to talk a little bit about Yugoslav history. To tell the story of the Belgrade Bar Railway, we have to kind of think about the context within which it was created, which is socialist Yugoslavia, and therefore we need to kind of tell the story of socialist Yugoslavia. And whilst we could jump back to the Middle Ages to tell that story, I think actually it's useful to start on the 3rd of October 1929, which is when the Kingdom of Yugoslavia was kind of renamed. The new name appeared. Yugoslavia is South Slavs, the land of the South Slavs. Yugo-South, Slavia, land of the Slavs. So the land of the South Slavs. This new name, which originally, out of the aftermath of World War I, the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, a name conveniently omitting the sizable population of Bosniaks, but there we are. Story of the area. So this country, in the aftermath of the First World War, had inherited quite a lot of railways. A lot of them were 760mm Austro-Hungarian narrow gauge, quite useful for traversing the mountainous terrain. But in the flatter northern part of this country, kind of along the Danube, lots of standard gauge railways, the route of the Orient Express and so on. So that was the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, and it had kind of been created from this kind of the more liberal project to create a unified land of the South Slavs rather than a greater Serbia, which was kind of an alternative ongoing project that had been very popular within Serbia at the time. So we have the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. Jump forward to the 25th of March 1941, and some history had been happening. The government of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, or rather the royal family, decided to sign up for the Tripartite Pact, which of course was the pact, fairly ineffective document, didn't really mean much, but it was the pact unifying Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan into one axis of evil. It didn't really mean much, but a bunch of other loser countries also signed on, and Yugoslavia, the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, was one of them. This did not go down well with the people of Yugoslavia. And indeed, on the 27th of March 1941, 2 days later, and not for the first time in history, there were enormous protests across the country, particularly in Belgrade. Thousands and thousands of people turning out to say that they were sick of their government's bullshit. And this is a recurring theme of mass protests reversing political action in the country. Anyway, huge protests across Belgrade. Protesters were using slogans that admittedly are catchier in Serbo-Croat, like better the war than the pact, better the grave than a slave, the Allies, for example, Winston Churchill said that Yugoslavia had found its soul. There was a coup. There was a coup d'état. Paul was deposed and Peter was brought in. Paul was abdicated. Peter came in. There's a robbing Peter to pay Paul joke in there somewhere. The trouble is, Yugoslavia's situation was not particularly favourable. It was surrounded to the west and to the south by Italy, Fascist Italy and its proxies, and to the north and the east by Nazi Germany and its proxies. So its condition was not in a good way, and its withdrawal from the Tripartite Pact following the coup did not go down well with Hitler, who on the 6th of April 1941, only a few days after the coup, launched an enormous blitzkrieg attack across Yugoslavia, bombed Belgrade pretty severely, and completely invaded Yugoslavia very rapidly. And despite the fact that Yugoslavia had more men than the attacking forces, about 700,000 strong army, they were poorly organised. Communication was very poor, logistics was poor, they were poorly equipped, and pretty rapidly Yugoslavia fell and was sort of split apart by the majority taken over by Nazi Germany. Fascist Italy took the southern section, Hungary and Bulgaria also gobbling bits up. It was then sort of split into client states, so you had particularly notable and relevant to today's politics is the client state of kind of Croatia, which was really kind of a fascist Nazi German puppet state. We have to talk about the resistance to this, though, because instantly there was resistance to this invasion and takeover. This is a country that had its entire history been defined by invading armies coming in, whether it's the Ottoman Turks or whether it was Austro-Hungarians, and having their country invaded and occupied by others. And there were two main forms of resistance, two main groups of resistance. One were the Chetniks. They were royalists, they were ethno-nationalists, they believed in the idea of a greater Serbia, they believed in primarily in the cause of the Serb, and they also benefited from the large-scale support of the Allies from the off, really. So that was the Chetniks. The other group was the partisans. They had two key advantages over the Chetniks. Yes, they didn't have the support of the Allies. They were poorly equipped, small numbers of forces, less well organised to start with. But they generally comprised of liberals, socialists, communists, progressives at large. The two advantages they had, one was that they had a decent cadre of experienced veterans from the Spanish Civil War. The other was that because they were not ethno-nationalists, they were following a broad South Slavic, Yugoslavian project. They benefited from the support of everyone. And that certainly helped them to gain traction. On the 8th of September 1943, things changed. Italy got beaten. The Italian Civil War kicked off, and this suddenly meant that Nazi Germany was responsible for the whole of Yugoslavia, and their forces were stretched that little bit more thinly, let's say. Enter Will Deakin, FWD Deakin, William Deakin, not to be confused with Will Deakin, friend of the show. He was sent by the British to report on the two groups. This is a kind of, by 1943, we'd had more than 2 years of resistance building. Will Deakin was sent to report on the status of the resistance. Now, Deakin arrived in Yugoslavia in the midst of an enormous German operation, Operation Schwarz, which was yet another anti-partisan offensive that the Germans were enacting, aimed chiefly at the partisans, but also the Chetniks. And his various reports contained kind of two important observations. The first, here they are, the partisans at work. Tito in all three pictures. Hello, Tito. Spot the Tito. The first was that the partisans were pretty effective fighters and had been putting up very stiff resistance and really grinding Nazi German resources, but that they had, as a result, suffered significant casualties and really were reaching the point where they required support. The second of the observations that he made, and these would be later backed up by British Ultra intercepts, the code cracking, Bletchley code cracking intercepts, and other kind of intelligence at the time, it was that the Chetniks were collaborating. They're collaborating with the fascist Italians, or had been, and then with the Germans as well, and also taking lots of photos to capture that as evidence for the future. Marvelous. So that they were collaborating, and they were also completely useless, or largely useless. They had an entire mountain division, the first mountain division of the German forces had transited from the Soviet Union on rail lines through Chetnik-controlled territory, and the Chetniks had just basically let them pass through without any sort of pause whatsoever. At this point, with the partisans essentially winning the moral war, it was clear to the Allies that they needed to switch allegiances, and so that's what they did. They didn't abandon the Chetniks, but they moved their allegiances from the Chetniks to the partisans. That same month, Churchill parachuted in an envoy to serve as a permanent formal liaison to the partisans, and the partisans got all kind of basically most of the support from that point. They also formally recognised the AVNOI, the anti-fascist, yes, because the partisans were Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Council for the National Liberation of Yugoslavia, which is basically the de facto government, and indeed. That government was kind of formally recognised, which created, on the 29th of November 1943, a kind of interim state, and it was known as Democratic Federal Yugoslavia. Roll on a year into September 1944, and Democratic Federal Yugoslavia had really been acting as a bit of a meat grinder for Nazis. Huge amounts of resources poured into attempting to retain this country by Nazi Germany, because the partisans had become an incredibly effective fighting force at this point. Air support from the Allies certainly helped, as had lots of kind of arms and material and other logistical support. But the partisans were really winning, essentially. They were winning. And you can see from this map that I've jimmied into our kind of graphic map here, that partisan-controlled territory was pretty massive, and only the main corridors could still be controlled by Nazi Germany. By this point, the Soviet Union had pretty much dominated Germany in the east and had occupied Romania and Bulgaria. They made their push with the support of the partisans. They made their push across the country, across Yugoslavia, kind of starting with the liberation of Belgrade. Here's a nice shot, kind of behind sort of what is now the government buildings in Belgrade. With I think this is the main road with Slavia, this Slavia Square kind of behind. What is now London Square, probably near here. Anyway, I digress. It's you can see the pretty vicious fighting that had occurred, and this began an enormous withdrawal of Nazi German forces out of Yugoslavia. They were kind of essentially running for their lives at this point. And on the 17th to the 25th of May 1945, the last battle being fought of World War II in Europe, so the last battle on European soil, it was the Battle of Odjak, which was, it sort of lasted a fair few days, and it was over 2 weeks after the last, after the end of the war, after the war had ended in Europe. But it was the armed forces of the independent state of Croatia, fascists, and kind of them supported by the Chetniks, weirdly, versus the partisans. And the partisans beat their ass. A pretty decisive victory for the partisans. So we saw the end of the Chetniks. Their leader, Draža Mihailović, was found guilty of war crimes, tried by a Yugoslav tribunal. The Chetniks, by the way, had been doing absolutely awful crimes against humanity across the country. He was found and executed, not before the US awarded him a Legion of Merit. But there we go. Longtime leader of the partisans, Josip Broz Tito here, our boy, stood next to Churchill in a spectacular fit. I mean, good grief, Churchill, what? Just all white. Quite something. Anyway, Tito, very much now president of Democratic Federal Yugoslavia, and his partisans and his partisan leadership then were able to, on the 29th of November 1945, 2 years after the formation of their nation state, create the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. And here it is, the emergence of Socialist Yugoslavia. Now, Tito was able to unite a a country with a hugely diverse country, a country that had been a meat grinder for Nazis for 4 years, and one that was pretty battered and bruised as a result. Unite these countries by this federal structure, by enabling the autonomy of the individual regions. There was a lot of work to be done, though, and as a result of this huge firstly, the huge population was the army. 800,000 men, 4 field armies worth of what were the partisans by the time they finished the war. So that was a huge number of men and material who could be directed into rebuilding the state. But a lot of people in the country, across the country, volunteered to support, young people particularly, volunteered to support this project to create a new state, this new model state, socialist Yugoslavia. So a huge amount of construction work was happening, roads particularly, but also railways, as we will describe. But housing too, New Belgrade there in the bottom corner, just an enormous effort to reconstruct a country, build a new nation, and industrialize. There's a 5-year plan to industrialize Yugoslavia. But we have to talk about railways. We have to talk about the Yugoslav railways, the Jugoslovenska železnica, that's in Serbo-Croat. There was a tremendous effort to expand the railway network, expand the standard gauge railway network across Yugoslavia as part of this industrialization, because the need to move goods across the country meant there was a need for an expansion of the railways. And so we saw an enormous effort of the construction of new railways. In 1946, only a year after the Second World War ended, we saw a 100-kilometre railway being constructed between Brčko and Banovići, kind of connecting, basically joining the dots between industrial areas, a lot of them in the mountains. So you can see, in fact, that in the background, the little faded background map, there's the big gap in the railway network was in the big mountainous area, kind of in the heart of Yugoslavia. 1947, we saw this expansion of another 250 kilometres of railway being built between Šamac and Sarajevo, kind of paralleling a former narrow gauge railway-ish, but connecting up to the main line up between Zagreb and Belgrade. 1948, another 112 kilometres of railway between Bihać and Knin over in Croatia, kind of shortening the journey down to the coast substantially from up in Zagreb. At this point, it's worth saying that there was, people often assume that Yugoslavia was a communist state as part of the Eastern Bloc associated with the USSR. That is not the case, and hardened by the fact that there was a split between Tito and Stalin. Stalin had sent several assassins to try and kill Tito, and allegedly a letter was sent back by Tito saying the following: "If you don't stop sending killers, I'll send one to Moscow, and I won't have to send a second." I mean, this period was up to this point, and kind of up to 1948 and a little bit beyond, in fact, was known as the Informbüro period, and it was a pretty paranoid period. Let's not claim that at the start of the creation of any state, but particularly a socialist one that had so much split, this ethno-nationalism that had been one of the resistance forces, had obviously built a huge amount of resentment, and it comes back to this friction that I talked about at the start of the segment. There's this idea of the greater Serbia, Serbs for Serbs, versus the broader Yugoslav project and the kind of the pan-national, pan-ethnic project, and this friction that existed. Tito held it together. Jump forward to 1966, so kind of well beyond the first one or more of the 5-year plans. New railway was extended. This is a fantastic railway, by the way, between Sarajevo, Mostar, and Ploče on the coast. Another 200 kilometers of railway. It wasn't just new railways being built, lots of electrification was going on, a 25 kV overhead electrification. So in this case, in 1970, that electrification expanded from Zagreb to Belgrade, kind of creating kind of a pretty fast intercity mainline, really, between the two cities. And then in 1976, by the way, as I'll talk about momentarily, to split into several sections that had been under construction since the late 50s. In 1976, the completed Belgrade Bar Railway was opened, adding another 500 kilometers of railway. So by 1976, just looking at these major projects alone, ignoring some of the smaller railway projects, just these major projects alone, well over 1,123 kilometres of new railway being built. So an enormous amount of new railway constructed. And if I flick between kind of the old map and the new map, you can see some of the other bits of railway that were existing there, and some that still remain. Actually, this is the electrification one, so you can see the different types of electrification up in Slovenia, which had a different electrification system. Anyway, I digress. It wasn't all sunshine and roses, though. You can see the enormous economic growth that, highlighted in orange here, the enormous economic growth that happened in Yugoslavia, socialist Yugoslavia, through the 50s, through the 60s, and indeed through the 70s. Tito died in 1980. The country had been a meat grinder for Nazis, and as a result, its infrastructure, what little infrastructure it had as a not hugely developed country, had been smashed to bits, and it required an enormous effort to rebuild. As was the case in lots of other situations across Europe with Marshall Plan funding, the US started to flex its imperial muscles by calling for liberalization, capitalization, and the sort of dismantling of the socialist state. Otherwise, it would call in its debts. And this, funnily enough, wrecked the economy of made an absolute mess of the economy of socialist Yugoslavia. There were other things going on, frankly. There were other issues going on, but a core problem was the need for austerity, the need for market liberalisation, called for by Yugoslavia's debtors, most of the US. This then spread inequality, because if you do austerity, that means you're spreading inequality. Inequality spreads resentment, which fomented substantial ethnic dissatisfaction across a pretty diverse country. And we know what the consequences of that were, or hopefully everyone watching this is aware of the consequences of what that were, because Yugoslavia disintegrated in civil war. The economy of the country went to hell, and so too did the railways. So, from the point where we had, these wonderful sort of, is one of the express diesel trains pulling trains around, to that same, and indeed Tito's blue train, and to the kind of being decay. I think these two pictures sort of summarise the state of the railways in what is left of Yugoslavia. And here we are in the rather fetching red Priboj station. Nice fresh ballast. It's all rather smart. You'd see is one of these classic towns nestled in the valley here with the forested escarpments behind. Don't think much of that barrow crossing or the platforms, to be honest. Here we are, all rather fetching. Yeah, there we go. There's the kind of the forested escarpments that kind of typifies this part of the country, this part of Serbia. Here, there's a minaret in the background there of a mosque, indicating a little bit about the religious and relatedly the ethnic diversity of the area. You see this medium density kind of reaching up the escarpment of the hill typifies this area. The railway kind of weaves along a valley surrounded by this sort of urban build-up. Not everything looking entirely alive. For example, this very much ex-factory that I would suspect died either before or certainly after UN sanctions. Another factory here that looks like it is functioning, the rather on-the-nose named Fabrika Automobila Priboj, the car factory of Priboj there. I wonder what they make there. So it's 2 o'clock. We are next to the Lim River, which is kind of like, well, further up it's on the Serbian and Bosnian Herzegovinian border, and it's quite a frontiery feeling part of the country. We're in Serbia still, or rather we're back in Serbia, having been in Bosnia and Herzegovina for 10 kilometres or something. If you're wondering, by the way, why my mask is coming on, it's because when I'm in the vestibule, generally it's like there's a gap, there's fresh air coming here, so it gives me a chance to breathe. It's an 11-hour journey, but I keep my mask on in the coach generally, unless I'm nibbling or drinking. This sort of, it's a mixture of things going on out there. Sort of in this urban area, where this is like Priboj, I don't know if it is anymore, but it's kind of this long stretch of urban area. Lots of tower blocks and stuff. It feels quite Balkan, actually. It feels quite kind of half rural Balkan with the kind of there's some older buildings, but a lot of tall kind of tower blocks sort of nestled in the centre of the town. Sort of new roads kind of pushed through. So the Lim actually becomes a reservoir soon-ish, and that should be quite interesting. So hopefully I'll get some shots before we disappear into a tunnel. Get some shots of the dam. But yeah, we've still got 6 hours to go. So lots of that's 5 hours done. To be fair, it's not too bad. Spirits are high. And this building isn't unfinished. There we go. See, it looks quite popular. It's like kind of like suburban vibes. But I'm not saying this is a hugely densely populated area compared to like Belgrade or Niš or Kragujevac or some of the big cities. But certainly it's populous and it's quite fetching. This mountain area is. It's pretty fetching. Very wooded, very interesting. I'd love to just explore. It'd be just fascinating to go and explore. Endless escarpments of wooded trees with these mountains above. It's just pretty beautiful. But as I say, this isn't the most mountainous part. We've gone through Zlatibor Mountain. We're now in the valley kind of beyond, as I'm sure we'll look at in a map momentarily. Also, here we go. As we've got the Lim River. This is a reservoir. You can see the dam there at the end. And then this nice reservoir that we're kind of crawling alongside here. Not going very fast. Very fetching though, isn't it? It's beautiful. It's actually really lovely. absolute reasons to take this railway is to enjoy the scenery, to enjoy the kind of the varying of the train. I'm sure if you go back through the video from last time and this time and look at the views, you see that you get it's almost this sort of, it's like a symphony. You get this increasing spikiness of the mountain scenery, and then it settles again, and as you kind of, and then it climbs once more, and you get all this civil engineering, so the tunnels, bridges, including this one here, which decidedly got blown up. This is on the Lim River near Bistrica. They got blown up by NATO in the late 90s. There are tunnels, bridges, and then also obviously earthworks and retaining structures, as we talked about last time. Just don't forget how much this is an enormous bit of civil engineering that we kind of pass through here.
Hey, what, baby?
Basically, going through the compartment car, so we can, there's the loco. Nice AC electric loco working its way along, hauling us along in front. Very nice. We're still next to the Lim, I believe. Look at this side. You can see it's still foresty and sort of roads going along next to us. It's kind of a mixture. It's kind of not hugely populated, but also around the we're kind of skipping in and out of kind of larger towns. This fire extinguisher has probably seen better days. Let's not worry about that. Indeed, yeah, it's nice to have a look. Hopefully, in my wanderings around the train, I've given you an idea of what this little consist looks like. I think it's only 4 coaches, isn't it? It's not a huge train. We had a look at it in the... Actually, I think that there are views of this train in both the previous video and this one. The coaches are varying ages. Like, this is definitely an older one we're in. It's pretty haggard looking. Then the intercity one, which I think I'm into now, is in a much better nick. Let's see, there's some people having a nice time. Families, business people, pretty well used. Sleeping wives. Yeah, this is the snazzy coach, which is why everyone's in it, I dare say. Yes, it's a lot of you see this area looks, parts of it look pretty affluent actually. Like some of the houses, some of the cars indicate kind of a higher level of affluence in this area than certainly we saw in Bosnia. Looking across, another theme is lots of graveyards next to the railway. I don't know why, I just sort of seem to see lots of them. Anyway, the weather's closing in, so things are looking a bit rougher. Yeah, these are fancy properties. See what I'm saying? Also, and cars as well. It's all a little bit fancy around here. I don't. The demographic is, I don't know. There's people who come down from Belgrade and have like country houses here or used to live here, and they've come back. They send money back to the family. But anyway, what else is there? Oh yeah, there's oh yes, us gently pulling into a location. Where is this location? Well, we're actually pulling into basically a passing loop because a train has to pass. It's going the other way. It's the train, the Bar to Belgrade train, make its way in the other direction. Cheerio. Come back to the back of the train. It's such a long journey. You can just meander around quite a lot. Some observations. Track quality is pretty good actually. There's some interesting things I've seen out. Like they use a fat sleeper to support the joint, which is quite so. Where they've got jointed track, for the most part, this is jointed. For the most part, it's actually now we're on welded track again. So for the most part, it's long welded, if not continuous welded rails. One observation: the whole line is hopelessly overcounted. Like you don't need, for the most part, along these curves, you don't need any cant whatsoever for the speeds the train's doing. So it's nice just through a tunnel again, and a little bit, just click that and do that. The road next to us as well. Come and stand here, all fancy. Look out this window, there, the road behind us. And yeah, hopelessly overcounted, but it's kind of, What was I saying about track quality? It's got quite bouncy. I'm in the older coach now. I don't know when this one was made. It's probably the 80s, probably. Anyway, still very much enjoying it. We're over the halfway mark. Well, in terms of time. Not sure about distance. I think we must get really slow as we weave up into the proper mountains in Montenegro. But yeah, the ballast quality, it's like the track quality is definitely reducing as we get further towards the edge of Serbia. So I don't know whether there's going to be an obvious difference when we cross that border in terms of the maintenance of the perfect way. But yeah, it's quite nice, isn't it? You've got nothing because it's bleached out. You've got this nice nice view out the back window of the train. It's kind of gently rocking, bouncing up and down. Doesn't look too bad, to be fair. Looking out this window as an observer, it's not too bad. You know, it certainly compares favourably to UK Heritage Railways. Anyway, definitely waffling. I'm going to continue, you know, filling time, padding, snoozing, eating bakery products, and drinking Kniaz Miloš. It's quite a good view out there. Yes, there is, because we are slowly and gently pulling up to the last station in Serbia. That's right, Prijepolje. Here we are, with a pretty rad-looking liveried loco just siding. Awesome. Yes, tickets, because tickets, papers, passports are what we need to hand over, because we are in, having been in Prijepolje, we're now in Prijepolje, the last station, the last big station, the last stop at least on this train before we reach the Serbian border and climb our way into Crna Gora. Indeed, climbing is what we are about to be doing. We've been gently climbing up to Prijepolje, then we're going to start doing some slightly more impressive climbing towards the border as we depart Prijepolje. And then again, lots of kind of look like 90s era gravestones. I don't know. But anyway, the weather's closing in again as we climb, I'm afraid to say. But here we go. This is, by the way, if you want more rear view footage, there's lots of that at the end of this video. So just remember, don't end at the credits. So it's quite nice scenery. I like this sort of open woodland. So it looks almost like, you know, Southeast European rainforest at this point, which, by the way, is parts of are UNESCO protected for this very type of terrain. So it's very, very beautiful. Here we go. Ooh, another tunnel. Right, here we are arriving into what I think is Brodarevo. Brodarevo station, Brodarevo. Here we are pulling up. We do stop, but no one gets out. I don't know whether more customs officers hop on. Interestingly, look, see the tracks go into the transformer there. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, another thing to note is the amount of track maintenance. I was talking earlier about track quality, and I'll talk about the next episode. I'll talk about some of the projects that have been going on. But a lot of investment has been happening in this line, and you can kind of tell by a lot of the new materials. Ooh, look, a nice. Yeah, I agree, Dina. Nice little monastery there in the valley. That's quite nice. And here, look at it's just snapshots because it's really difficult to. But you just saw a snapshot of the gorge there. The scenery gets very, very spectacular as we approach the border. You know, just little snapshots, I'm afraid. Oh, look, we're stationary. Why might that be? So over there, in the door that's currently closing, is Montenegro. And here, in fact, if I shine over this door, because I can do that, over here, with some emotional painting behind, is Serbia. And we're very, very close to the border. Well, I mean, yeah, literally over there. We're about to cross the border, so leaving Serbia behind. We've already had one passport check, which is fairly pain-free. In fact, with the two police people out there who did the passport check, I think they're saying goodbye because this train's then going to pass across the border, and we're going to get our passports checked again by the Montenegrin border control. Fairly straightforward. Yeah, I've just shown you some footage of how weavy-windy the line is. This is going to be a slow video. We're going to have lots of nice, uninterrupted sections of the view out the back of the train. Yeah, we'll see. There's so many spectacular structures that I'm just failing miserably to represent. So many fantastic views that a little lens like this just can't. You've got to take the train to actually experience it. But hopefully I've vaguely approximated it. Anyway, right, I'm going to go make sure I've got hold of my passport in case they do another one. Yeah, it somewhat makes the Eurostar security checks seem ridiculous and unnecessary, given there isn't a history of ethnic tension between England and France. But anyway, the slight view of the gorge. This is just absolutely stunning views up across. It's difficult to comprehend just how beautiful this section is. It's just. I think this is known as the Pesta Plateau here, and you can just see all these kind of cliffy kind of lumps with the forested escarpments. Really spectacular. But also the Lim River still, I think, weaving along, separating us in Montenegro. It's just a very enjoyable journey. It's just a really, honestly, very enjoyable, very interesting journey. Here we are. Lots of there's a river. Nice view of the mountains here, and of. Just a general view of the sort of terrain. Things are getting more rural again, more agriculture, but looking quite healthy. There's quite a lot of healthy looking farms. Everything does look quite smart around here, have to be said. The weather opened up at this point actually, so we got some blue sky, and then we just got this mist coming off the mountains, which was really fab. Very much enjoyed that. Some animals as well there, because it's very very fetching. It's very nice. These sort of almost small holdings sort of set up here, and then the foothills climbing up to the higher mountains in the background. It's a very appealing bit of terrain. I'd strongly recommend. Obviously, just come take this train for everyone. Come and take the train. Let's update where we are. So we were in Priapolje. Where have we got to now? We are now working our way, because we're about to arrive into Bielopolje. We've crossed the border. All of what you saw there was Montenegro, it's worth pointing out. We're now sitting at the bottom of a very large hill before we climb up into the mountains, into the Dinaridi mountains, and towards Kolašin, and some serious views await us. Anyway, here we are, Bielopolje. Very nice. What else is there to see here? It's a very rudimentary station. It's quite a sizable station. Why is that noisy? Oh, it's because the train. There's a loco about to go past. Not the snappiest name of a railway operating company, it must be said. Anyway, here we are. Train parked up. Some moving around, because obviously you can't have the Serbian train, the Serbian loco. The Serbian loco has to come off, and then they put the Montenegrin loco on the front. Seems unnecessary to me, but anyway, that's what they do. There we are, Železnički prevoz Crna Gora. There we are. That's the name of the Montenegrin railway operator. So there's a bit of freight, in fact, lots of freight. It's quite a big station, this one. Quite a lot of stuff being exchanged for the haul over the hill. Presumably quite a lot of fiddling. It's almost like a fiddle yard. Quite a lot of fiddling goes on before they take the trains in either direction, up into Serbia or southwards towards Podgorica and the sea. Bouncy bounce. Ooh. Gently does it. We've all been here, we've all twiddled with the dial. Can you do it nice and smoothly? Oh. That'll do. Very nice. Anyway, there we go. Our train is pointing southwards towards the mountains, because we are very much about to be climbing up into the mountains. We're in Bielopolje, which is in Montenegro, Crna Gora. So yeah, we've made it across the border. I mean, obviously it's fine. It's very casual passport check, and the doors closing again, and we're soon going to be on our way. Indeed, a few freight wagons here. You can see lots of nice houses. It's, as I say, there's a ribbon of built-up area that we're kind of passing along, the railway passing along. Probably contributed to that development, even though everyone seems to drive, sadly. On the move, anyway. We've just pulled away from the Lim, finally. We've been following it for, tens of kilometres, quite a long way. We just pulled away from it to begin our climb. So it's, what time is it now? It's just gone 5 past 5. So less than 3 hours to go, and we are decidedly going up and up. Up and up indeed, because we are climbing. You can see the little HGV down there on the road, the valley floor. We've kind of diverted off the main river. We're climbing up into the mountain. Indeed, there's a nice poster for some of the civil engineering work that's been going on the line. More on that next episode. Snapshots in all directions. Oh, there's that guy. Don't worry about him. Viaducts galore. The higher up you go, the more civil engineering you have to use to make use of the limited number of contour lines you can thread a railway along. But already you're kind of finding ourselves climbing up into the clouds. It's pretty spectacular. This climb up into the clouds as we pass through Mijatovo and with the mountains kind of as this framing behind it. So it's quite. We're on the side of a hill. If you haven't noticed, we are on the side of a mountain, kind of weaving our way through the hills. We're actually approaching a pretty substantial tunnel that kind of sticks us out in a town called Moikovac, which is quite nice. As we dive deeper and deeper into Montenegro, there's less. Oh, there's a lovely view up that valley with that road. That looks like quite a nice drive. Less and less railway left before we actually reach Kolašin. Between the weaving of the train, kind of weaving and following the contours, the fact that we're climbing at a pretty steady rate, and the horrendous overcanting of this whole line. This is quite the roller coaster. Everything's still pretty forested at the moment, but I think the amount of foliage is going to reduce as we climb further towards 1,000 meters above sea level. This is a lot of fun. Well, I'm glad I'm enjoying myself as I pop out of a tunnel, out of the long tunnel I was alluding to earlier, into Moikovac, the fairly sizable little town here. Not that you can get a view of it here. There's the little approach road, but you'll see in a second it's quite a large town. As the town kind of avails itself before us as we pass through. Some of you are going, wait a minute, am I watching a real-time view of this whole trip? I could just go on it myself. Well, no, because this is only 3 hours worth of video I'm giving you in total, including the 3 episodes. It's very yellow. I can see his houses, crikey, very nice. There's this whole thing, this journey took like 13 hours because we got delayed from basically this point onwards. Look at that. Looking very pleasant. In fact, there's some more railway starts to it. That looks like a decidedly disused whatever it is. Factory? Question mark? We're not sure. Anyway, some sleepers in a pile. There's about to be some, passing the loop. That's what we want to see. Some more railway stuff going on. We also seem to be slowing steadily. That's probably because Moikovac is quite a big town. I hope the train's going to stop and pick up some people. There we go. Also, as you've been noticing the whole time, OLE mass, of course, this whole line electrified to 25 kV. Doing better than we can in the UK for many of our railways, let's face it. Nice fresh ballast there, look at that. Lovely. Oh, there we are. And indeed, we're on the move again, following the Tara River, in fact, as we're about to pass over it, I think. You can see that that's a road. Below us, momentarily, is going to be the Tara River. Following this spectacular wooded gorge. I mean, we've had, the theme of this is showing you what Balkan terrain is, what not Balkan, really what Yugoslav terrain is like, what Serbian Montenegrin terrain is like. The heart of this former country is just this epic, quite hostile, difficult terrain. Now, there's a brief snapshot of a very epic bridge, and I'm going to attempt to film that bridge several times. There are very brief snapshots. I'm going to attempt several times to film it and failed miserably because the foliage. I don't know whether it's better to do this in winter because you can see all the structures and the views, but then there's a risk that also it's dark for a lot more of the year. So, or is it? I don't know. The variation isn't quite as much down this part. So I don't know. There's no, because it's gone around the corner. You briefly saw the bridge. Now you can just see the epic gorge and the kind of the mountain, the misty mountain across the other side, once again covered in wood to its very tops. With the odd cliff and it is spectacular, unassailable scenery. I mean, where would you start in attempting to get to the top of these? Munros, you've got a bloody motorway to the top, pretty much every single Munro of these. Goodness knows how you can find your way up to the top. Anyway, here we are. Look, it's another passing loop splitting away from us. What else are we going to see here? Yeah, it's a nice railway infrastructure. Trough room. And views down to the gorge again. Weaving and weaving and weaving. Bridge after bridge after bridge. because it is. We have to follow. We're following the contours as best we can, short of where we every now and then nip out into a. There's a few times. Well, here we are passing what I assume is Trebaljevo. I think it's like a brief moment. Actually, there's a brief section line. We kind of weave around a big corner. It's a substation. Yeah, we kind of weave around a big corner before disappearing into a series of tunnels that then take us to Kolašin. So. Yeah, another passing. It's a chance. These brief. This signal as well. Brief chance for us to have passing. It didn't look like 500 meters, though, did it? Maybe it was. I think all the passing was 500 meters. I don't know whether I say that in this video or in another video, but anyway, digress. There's Dina looking pensively out the window at some foliage. And there's a structure in the background. That's a nice bridge. Brief snapshot bridge before we disappear into a tunnel. And here we are once again high up. The weather mixed bag. Yeah, every now and then there's just lots and lots of little bridges over each of the little valleys that we pass over. On the side of the hill, it's not smooth. There's lots of little, gorges with water on them that you have to pass over. Where else are we? Oh, I tell you what, though. There we go. Weather, sea, mixture. Very rather British-looking weather at this point with the mixed clouds. Although this camera image doesn't really do it justice. It's pretty spectacular at this point. The weather is remarkable. Sadly, it closed in at the opportune moment, but I'm not going to tell you about that because that's for you to enjoy in the next video. But as we kind of gently trundle higher and higher above the houses, the tree tops, and so on and so forth, we are approaching our kind of closing destination, at least for this part of the video, or this section, this part two of 3. I do know my own video structure. This is infuriating for the audio only people, I'm sure. Anyway, there's another bridge in the background that I didn't successfully film that you can just about see curving around. Very nice. And that's just that's over the what I think is called the Svinjača river. As we weave our way into Kolašin, we are almost at the top of the hill. Almost climbed over and mounted the highest point on the railway. The highest point on the railway, which is 1,032 meters. It's a seriously impressive geography that we're assailing at this point. Really, really is quite magical. And here it is, Kolašin station. Rather understated. In fact, we're pulling out of it now because I didn't film us pulling in. I did, but it was all clicky. Kolašin, there it is. That's a smart enough station with pretty incredible views. Spectacular views, I would say. There's some track maintenance train here. I think these are all full of ballast. What other machines are? I'm sure there's others. I seem to remember there being some other on-track machines that we've filmed here. Maybe in the background. Anyway, lots of sleepers, some rails piled up. Lots and lots of things to allow them to look after the track, which is good because it is actually in pretty good nick, which is reassuring because let me tell you, the gradient from here in Kolašin down to Podgorica is very, very extreme, which is possibly why I inadvertently kind of walked along and looked at all the various brake handles along the train just to make sure myself familiar with where they were. Anyway, that's another story. This is what the views were looking like from the top. Absolutely breathtaking. This is what I could film while the weather hadn't closed in. Dancing with angels at this point in our train. Dancing with angels. Thank you to all of you listening to this in audio-only form. I don't know how the hell this works. These 3 episodes, this series, this little kind of 3-part series is very much like background. I'm not going to be offended if you're saying this is kind of gentle background noise for those of you who particularly enjoy my softly spoken Scottish lilt. Then you can enjoy that, me describing a rail journey from Belgrade to Bar. The usual adverts, patreon.com/GarethDennis to support or indeed to aggravate me to not create more of this. GarethDennis.uk/merch for merchandise. And also do suggest merchandise in the Discord server, GarethDennis.uk/Discord. And for general coinage, paypal.me/GarethDennis. Thank you so much to all of you who support the show in any way that you do, because it's a bit of a labour of love. I enjoy making this podcast. I enjoy episodes being very different. You don't know what... I think we span a range of different things. Hard-hitting interviews, and then this guff. It's a spectacular bit of scenery. Oh, the last thing I have to tell you is that Leo Murray is joining us next week. Episode 182, Electric Vehicle Chargers Should Be Kept Off Pavements. We're going to talk about all sorts of things, including what the solutions for on-street charging are, and why quite a lot of them are not very good, with a bit of a focus on what's happening in London, because that's where most of them are being built at the moment. Anyway, that should be very interesting. It was a great episode because I've recorded it already because of the magic of television. In the meantime, let's go back to me and see what I have to say, because I don't actually know that I'm ending an episode, so let's see if I manage to do something like that. So we're now in the tunnel just after Kolašin, which is almost the summit of the line. In fact, the summit might be in this tunnel actually, I'm not sure. The summit is at 1100 metres above sea level, which is, Monroe height. And the views have been, hopefully I've caught a snapshot of a few. The views have just been absolutely breathtaking, honestly, spectacular. I don't know what this line is like in winter when it's snowing. If the train is able to pass, that will just be mind-blowing. But it's very green at the moment, which is fine apart from the foliage blocking the view. Anyway, let's have me and me and then me and then me behind that in a shot. Before I go and enjoy the rest of the view. There's Mala Reka, which is coming up soon, which will be fantastic. That's a viaduct, by the way. Oh, thank you, me in the past. Very interesting. It only remains for me to sort of bid you all farewell. Thanks for listening. Cheerio, everyone. Cheerio! everyone, thank you for sticking with the episode so far. It's the very end of episode 181, and as a little tidbit, we're going to talk about the 181 class. No, there is not a British Rail Class 181. There is, however, the Irish Railways 181 class diesel locomotive, built by General Motors EMD, Electromotive Division. A rather rugged AF looking beast here. There is a tenuous link from this beast, rather, practical looking beast, the 181. Here is looking rather more shiny and looked after. There's a tenuous link between this vehicle and the Belgrade Bar Railway, because the 181 class, built by GM EMD, shares a lot in common to the 71 class, also built by GM EMD. This is the Irish Railways 71 class, or the Northern Ireland Railways 110 class, or the Serbian Railways Series 666. And it was delivered, you can see, slightly different looking beast, but it's the same vehicle as the 71 class, that is. Delivered as a replacement to the very original Series 761, which is based off a Kraus Maffei ML2200. You can see the rusted out remains of it as we passed it, and you've seen elsewhere in this series of videos it looking slightly healthier. But there we go. There's the link. So these. Oh, by the way, the 666s, the Užice 666s are still, or Šeš are still running in and around former Yugoslavia as we speak. They're still hanging around. Some of them are still in their original Tito Blue Train blue, as you can see from that photograph, the third along there. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.